I should just do this as my work, and
Mm-hmm.
then actual time off work.
Yeah.
So that's the point when I started to uh, think seriously about transitioning into a full-time crypto job. And obviously, the most natural thing to do is for me to join a quant trading firm that trades crypto,
Yeah.
because the job is like the skill sets are fully transferable. In fact, when you trade using a quant strategy, you don't really care what you're trading. They're all tickers, and you don't look at the tickers. It's handled by the machines, anyways. Um, so that's like good and bad. Good in the sense that I wouldn't lose anything.
This episode features Xinwan, a researcher at Uniswap Labs. Despite using the term research and labs in one sentence, this company actually deals with financial technologies, such as cryptocurrencies. In his past role, Shin was a researcher at Applied Quantitative Research, also known as AQR. He holds a bachelor degree from University of Pennsylvania and a master's from Princeton University. One theme in this discussion is his ability to come up with simple heuristics to live by. These rules are surprisingly simple for someone who has been able to achieve his levels of success. So we start this conversation talking about what it was like growing up in China, in particular the education system and the type of emotional impact it can have on a student. We then get into why he decided to come to the US for college and how he was able to make that transition. He talks about and gives some advice on how to apply to colleges from China. When he's at UPenn, we reflect on his experience as a international student, and I guess in particular a Chinese student, and how that impacted his sort of friend group and his ability to socialize. One thing that was interesting was how the education that he was exposed to and sort of the amount of requirements that he just had to satisfy in high school and middle school and so forth sort of prevented him from developing the ability to make decisions on his own. So this also had an impact on him at University of Pennsylvania, where you now had the freedom to pick what courses and what career you wanted, and he felt like he never had this opportunity before, so it was like a new thing he had to learn. We cover how he was sort of navigating all of this at once, coming up with heuristics, and how this led to him sort of doing his summer internships and deciding to do internships or not to do internships at different stages in his university education. Eventually, Shin leaves his first job to go to Princeton University to do a master's, and we talk about sort of what it's like to do a master's, why one should do a master's, and when one should do a master's. After his master's at Princeton, he gets his job at AQR, being a quantitative researcher. We get into what it means to be a quant researcher, how one can go about getting this job, and what the day-to-day can look like. Eventually, it does end up in crypto. So we talk about why he decided to move into this space, this cryptocurrency space, and what he hopes to achieve there. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hey Shin, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for kindly agreeing to be on it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, sweet. So I wanted to sort of jump into China, right? And so for context, Shin grew up in China and he's now in the US, but I don't know if it's just me or if everybody else shares this similar lack of knowledge, but I have no idea what the education So I'm just curious if you could describe what high school is like, and in the sense of what the exams are like. I have this notion that they're very difficult and competitive. I also don't know how soon do you need to sort of pick your career. I've heard in some, not in China, but in some countries, you have to pick very early if you're going down a STEM path or a non-STEM path. And I don't know if you can help just describe a little bit about what it was like to give us some context.
Yeah. I guess first off, I'll say that everything that I say has to be caveated in the way that the education system in China is very heterogeneous. So different cities, different schools will feel very differently. I guess was in some sense lucky to go to, first of all, a series of schools that are both academically somewhat competitive, but also, lifestyle wise, somewhat normal. And so, what I describe as my personal experience is potentially not even representative uh, of the average Chinese kid growing up. But I'll just try my best to describe what I see for me and maybe for some other schools in the city that I grew up in.
Yeah, can you also describe the normal as you describe yours so we can
Yeah,
know how to
yeah, for sure.
understand?
So I grew up in the city called Nanjing, which is about an hour train ride away from Shanghai, which is right now the biggest city in China. And my city is like, decent sized in Chinese standard. So that's like 8 million people in
Wow. That's
population.
bigger than the population of Trinidad.
Yeah, so it's like a decent sized city. I was fortunate in the sense that my mom and my parents in general, they pay a lot of attention to education. I know that's like a stereotypical thing for Chinese parents, but it's not guaranteed that your parents think that education is like the most important thing. And I think lucky for me, my parents, especially my mom, did think so. So I just remember moving quite frequently as I grew up. I was probably moving every like 2 to 5 years, um, just to try to get close to like whatever the good school is.
Wait,
Um,
so your whole family would move or just you?
well, whole family meaning me and my parents.
Yeah,
We
okay.
would rent. I think growing up, I don't remember living in an apartment that we own for. I think we lived in the apartment we owned for like 2 3 years throughout my 18 year uh,
Mhm.
in China, and so
Wait, so they were really just moving to support your education?
maybe there's other reasons too, but
Yeah.
I think that was a big part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was like very little, they were moving because in China they have the system where if you work in a state-owned enterprise company, they sometimes allocate like a apartment to you, and I don't think you own that. You can just live in it, and so maybe we're moving once or twice for that reason. But after that, I think it's mostly just renting to be close to school or something. Um, so yeah, so I went to this. Let me just start way back, and I
Okay.
went to this, technically like a decent kindergarten.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how they come up with kindergarten rankings, but it's ranked top in that, like, what do you call it? It's a smaller unit density. It's like a district, maybe, and it's considered one of the good kindergartens in the district. Uh, and now I think about it, it's a horrible kindergarten. The teachers were really tough on kids, which is the general theme throughout. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, they would yell at the kids. I don't think my kindergarten had this issue, but the neighboring kindergarten, which is like literally, was sharing one wall, and that one had a kid whose ear was like torn because the
Mhm.
teacher was dragging him by the ear.
Wow.
And so that's the kind of thing that happens.
Yeah. But in
Um,
your one was punishment a thing, like physical punishment?
Physical punishment, maybe in the sense that you're like asked to stand outside of the classroom or something.
Okay.
Like remember,
Yeah.
I don't like to take afternoon naps. They would ask me to mop the floor when other people are napping. I would just like be mopping the floor, which might be good for me actually after lunch.
Yeah. Your
Uh,
insulin.
right. So that is the kindergarten, and then like even before school, I remember. Well, this is like a lot of it is my recollection from what my parents later told me is the teachers they they somehow yeah, I guess I don't know how they're evaluated, but somehow they really want to push the kids to study, even if they're just in kindergarten. And my mom didn't really want that. And so she just thought that, at this such a young age, you should be spending time outdoors or with other kids instead of trying to do homework and whatnot. The teacher would always get in these arguments with my parents, trying to tell them that if I don't put in the work now, I will lose on the starting line of sort of
Mm-hmm.
the race of the life, right? And that keeps on going. So I remember saying like, I don't even know how you count grades when you're in kindergarten, but in your last year in kindergarten, we have this Japanese class. Um, I don't know why, but yeah, there is Japanese class you can take, and somehow everyone's taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom thought it's a sort of a joke, so she went to the school and said, uh, she's not taking that class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and she's really stubborn, so they they could not convince her for me to take it.
Uh-huh.
So in my mind, during the time, I never figured out why that was the case, but I do remember, uh, like every week, there's maybe 2 days for I don't know, a 1 hour or 2 hour period. It would be just me playing on the playground and everyone else in class.
So you were just playing by yourself on the
Right.
playground?
Just like me out of the entire kindergarten, just me. And I could never
Wow.
figure out why that was the case. And I was
Yeah.
too young to know the rules and the schedule and everything.
Yeah.
I was just like a little confused as to why I'm outside and
Uh-huh.
not inside, and it was fine with the teachers. But yeah, that I do remember.
This sounds like such a funny experience as a kid.
Um,
What
yeah,
did
so
you do?
I don't know. I just like you go on one of these there's slides you can
Yeah.
do, and walk around. I don't even know. Remember the exact details, but I do remember being kind of confused. Uh,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so that's my kindergarten experience. But you can already tell that even at that young age, there's this notion of you have to study now
Yeah.
or you will be disadvantaged. And it is like a big part of the children's life already. I There's like writing exercises, like you're supposed to write numbers and your name, and I have like pretty bad fine muscle control.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard for me to write just from 0 to 9. And it took me
Wait,
like,
still?
well, not now, but
Okay.
back then,
Yeah.
like I I would take like s- uh, 2 to 3 hours to just
Mm-hmm.
write a few digits,
Mm-hmm.
and that like frustrates me and frustrates my parents. And so
Mm-hmm.
they end up just telling the teacher like she's not doing homework. And so
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, that's what happens. Okay, and then now we move to elementary school, I guess. So yeah, I think they did kind of try to get me to a good school. And usually to go to a good school, you have to basically live in the neighborhood that is, I guess, belong to the school, or the school
Mm-hmm.
belongs to that neighborhood. And we couldn't, or I guess they couldn't buy an apartment in the neighborhood or something. So they did have to figure out a way to like get me in. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that involves, doing things not explicitly written in the rules,
Uh-huh.
like finding people with connections and so on.
Yeah.
But I got into this school, who or which later become, unfortunately, kind of famous online for being really tough on its students because one of the almost like a poster child or a good student who graduated from the school went to my same high school as well and eventually got a PhD in the US. She just went online, or this is many years later. She went online and basically portrayed the school as a place that's destroying the mental health of these young kids,
Yeah.
which I agree, which
Yeah.
is basically what happens.
Right. Wait, at what age was this?
This is elementary school, so grade 1 to 6.
No, but how old are you? And
Oh, when this like article was published,
no, when you're in elementary school, just I
uh
can't remember. What is the age?
7 to 12.
Wow. So at that age, you're
Yeah.
already getting pushed so
Oh,
hard
yeah,
that
yeah.
someone is saying,
I am in an environment that systematically destroys
"Oh my God, this
kids.
explains so much about you now." Just kidding.
Um, yeah, so that was my elementary school. That's when I started doing like math, what do you call it? Math Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
coding competition as well.
Mm-hmm. Wait.
Uh,
Oh my God, you started coding competitions at that age?
yeah, when I was 9, I think.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay.
Um, yeah. Oh, I guess one thing I didn't say is maybe like while I was not talented at a bunch of things, there's one thing I was like early on kind of talented in, which is doing mental math.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Okay.
and so I guess that explains a lot of the things that happened later on. But
Uh-huh.
I
But
think
wait, it's interesting that you were doing coding challenges when you were 9, because that was like what, early 2000s? Wait, what?
yeah,
How do I? Oh,
2001
2000.
maybe.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just thinking about the stage of personal computers at home,
Mhm.
and what was the stage of personal computers at home, and then how were in terms of like global, globally personal computers, and then how was it that the education system was already so caught up to be doing coding, right? That's
Uh,
kind of amazing to me because we're roughly the same age, or
yeah.
same year, and at 9, the schools that was in, well,
Uh-huh.
maybe this is just difference between Trinidad and China, but the schools that I was in, not until I was like the end of high school actually did
Uh-huh.
we have a computer in the school. So I'm like, you guys were like learning how to program. So that's kind of amazing, but it does make sense given that you said you were in this elite type of school. But sorry, I just thought that was like pretty wild how.
Yeah, I mean, back then we certainly did not own a personal computer at home. But I think it's more common than some people own it at home, and we don't think of them as like super rich people, right? I think like normal people can own a personal computer. And I just use the computer in the school's labs, sort of. Um, and plus, like the first 2 years, you're not really touching the computer. You're just
Mm-hmm.
learning sort of algorithms and how they work. But yeah, I feel like at that time, mm, so basically everything that the school does is in preparation for getting you into the next stage, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
very utilitarian in a way. And the sort of the best schools in the city that I grew up in, there's three of them. Well, one of them being sort of like even slightly better than the other two, but there's three schools, and the way they admit students is sort of weird. Well, not weird, but is sort of convoluted. And the two sort of most effort dependent way are to get a prize in the math competition, which I did, meaning I did participate,
Uh-huh.
or as in the coding competition, which I also participated. And the rest, is weird because you have to go through this lottery system. So even if you're the best student in the world, if you don't win these lotteries, then you cannot even test for these schools. And so I think that's a big reason why we're starting so early on these competitions, because in there, you like, if you actually are the best, then you will get the prize. And then once you have the prize, you're sort of guaranteed entry to these good schools. Yeah, so I just remember my elementary school being mostly just doing math and coding and trying to get by with all the other subjects without failing too badly. Well, I think I
Mm-hmm.
did well, to be fair, but I wasn't like really trying to learn them. I was just trying to kind of prepare for the tests. And again, the environment is sort of hostile to students, especially someone like me who likes to talk. You know, in the classroom, it's like 40 minutes. It's impossible for I don't know, someone of my age to
Uh-huh.
stay focused for 40 minutes. And so, especially when you when you know what they're talking about, right? They're trying to explain this math thing, but if you understand what they're saying, it doesn't, like, you will not focus on the thing because you already understand it. And then I'll
Yeah.
start speaking to people sitting next to me, and then
Uh-huh.
I'll ask to get out of the classroom. I think
Yeah.
I probably rank top 3 in terms of time spent, mandatorily outside of the classroom during.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um,
I also used to get in trouble a lot for that. Yeah. It would be the biggest complaint to my parents during
right.
Parents' Day that he talks during class.
Yeah, it's just a constant theme. Going from maybe even kindergarten all the way to high school. That's just like a nonstop theme. I think it's only in college when things are a bit more challenging, and when it's not challenging, you can just look at your computer. I stop talking to other people in class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then I did the competitions and I ended up in one of the good schools. So sort of as planned, right?
Mm-hmm. Which
Um,
one did you succeeded in the coding one?
yeah,
Both.
I
Okay.
succeeded in the coding one. I have to say, expected to also succeed in the in the math one.
Uh-huh.
Because in general, I'm good,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I didn't know back then, but maybe I was experiencing some sort of burnout, that
Mm-hmm.
I can't really focus for the 2 months before the competition.
Uh-huh.
So I just really dropped off there. Um, so I got the price that's like one tier below where you will be guaranteed entry.
I see.
Yeah, but I did have the coding one, and that was enough. Yeah, so I ended up in one of these good schools, um, and so that's where I have to mention that, like, once you're in a good school, a lot of the toxic stuff kind of disappears
In a good high school.
in a good high school, or a
Okay.
middle and high school.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of the reason is, so in China the system works in a way that, like, at your after your sixth grade, which is the end of the elementary school, you test for middle school, and at end of middle school, which is 3 years, you test for high school, and at the end of high school, you test for college.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'm going to one of these good schools, and they have a middle school department and a high school department, and the people that goes to that middle school um, has a much higher chance of going to their high school than if you're trying to enter from other middle school to their high school. So I basically avoided one of these really stressful tests. Um, and on behalf of the teachers, they then are not like super harshly evaluated based on how successful their students are. So then they would pass on less of the pressure to their student as well. So yeah, I had a very happy sort of grade 7 to 9, basically not having to worry about getting into a good high school, because I basically know that I'm guaranteed a spot. There's no beating of students.
Wait, at which one? In the middle school?
Middle and high school.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no beating of students, or at least in the sort of the classroom that I was assigned to. There's no beating
Yeah.
of students. People are in general happy, which is, I think, not representative at all. As far as I know, other schools they have it pretty rough there. Okay, so what should I say now? I guess I think grade 7 to 9, I mean, inclusive of high school, is like a pretty critical period for forming a lot of the personality and interpersonal skills. Because I think coming out of the environment in my elementary school, you're naturally very afraid of speaking to people and making mistakes. And you know, you make a mistake and you expect to be immediately and heavily punished. Right?
Why afraid of speaking to people? Because you're told to stay quiet and listen during school?
Right, right. And people who are not your peers are in general pretty like authoritative and not reasonable. Right?
Okay.
So I think having like, and then in middle school, being able to have a friendly and somewhat equal relationship, not really equal, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like they're beating up on you all the time with your
Mm-hmm.
teachers.
Mm-hmm.
It really help you form the ability to handle um, relationship with a potential power imbalance later in life. Yeah, so I do think that period is pretty critical, and I'm thankful that I'm in a good environment. I don't think it should be taken for granted in China.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And this is a minority of students who have this good environment.
right, it's
Yeah.
super. I think it's super rare.
Okay.
And I guess one thing that I also consider myself somewhat lucky is I know a lot of people who came out of my elementary school really had a tough time. So like
Mm-hmm.
they will develop depression, and they
Mm-hmm.
cannot handle the way that they were treated in the school. Very, understandably so.
Yeah. You mean like
Um,
later on in life? It's
or just like, by the time they graduate, they already having some issues.
got it. Okay.
And I sort of, maybe it's my parents taught me or something, but I sort of just treated the verbal abuse and occasional, physical beating as a practice to get tough mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So like when they start yelling at me and do things to me, I will just think, okay, this is a time to practice, and I shall not give in. I'm just going to
Uh-huh.
be as tough as I can, and once it's over, I consider it a win. And
Uh-huh.
I don't think that's like very common. I think a lot of people kind of just gotten beaten up really bad.
Wait, I'm just curious, what type of things did they do to you? For me, the worst was putting my hand out and getting slapped with a ruler on my hand or something.
Oh, I
But
mean,
I've seen worse happen in Trinidad, so
uh-huh,
kind of
uh-huh.
curious what happened. But yeah. I mean,
Uh,
this is what we're talking about right now so casually. It's just so wild for any American to even hear about.
yeah, I mean, it's let's see. Well, verbal abuse is pretty common, like on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
Speak in class and they they get impatient with you, then you're done. But what other things? So okay, so there's this one day, I think first day of my grade. So I what happened is I didn't go to orientation. We have this like pre-day, that's like orientation day, where the class master, like the head teacher for that class,
Mm-hmm.
will say some things to know about the semester and things like that. And one thing they said, and I wasn't there, so I didn't know, was we have this convention, I would say, to wrap your textbook in some sort of protective
Yeah.
papers.
Yeah.
Usually my dad does it for me.
Mm-hmm.
and he said you cannot use newspapers because if you use newspapers, you might get distracted by like reading the newspaper.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't there, so I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad used newspapers.
Uh-huh.
And so on the first day of the semester, I was walking in, and he was like checking people's books, right?
Yeah.
And then he saw me with all my books in newspapers. And he was like, well, I said not to use newspapers. And very naturally, I said, I did not know that. But understand that in China, you do not talk back to your teacher.
Oh my
And
God.
so, and we kept going back and forth. He's like, I said not to use it. And I was like, I do not know. And he's like, you're talking back to me, but I don't know. And so what happened is we're on the 5th floor. He ripped all my books and threw my book and my school bag from the 5th floor down to the playground.
Oh my
I was
God.
standing outside of the classroom for like the first half of the day.
Did
Uh,
everyone know you because of that after, as the guy who got
no,
his...
because the entire classroom is like a class, and that we
Uh-huh.
all take all classes together. So
Yeah.
so we've spent 5 years together already, so everyone knows
Okay.
me already.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a rough start.
Damn, that's tough.
Okay, where was I? I guess I was in high school now, and I have note that I haven't had a tough time for like 3-4 years
Yeah.
because I didn't have to go through the high school test.
Mm-hmm.
Things had been smooth, but then we face a challenge of like, well, now you have to actually take the test for college.
Yeah. You mean for university?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Okay.
Um,
What is
and-
that exam system like? Is everything on one day type of thing?
right. So here's the important part is in my school, and it's I think it's a unique feature of my school. It's I don't think it's seen anywhere else, but in my school, there's a few paths you can choose for yourself. You can keep doing sort of the math, physics, chemistry, the STEM competition,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and if you do well as in you're ranked like nationally in the top 100 or something,
Mm-hmm. Because
then
you take universal exams, national
no,
exams.
those are like competitions, right?
Okay.
Competitions are organized nationally.
Got it. Okay.
So if you do well in those competitions, uh, usually you're guaranteed entry to one of the top universities. And obviously, like the better the school, the harder it is to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tsinghua and Peking University are considered the best, and they usually require you have either I can't remember exactly, but like you have to make the national team, or you have to be in the top X across 2 different subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And like doing it for one is like achievement of a lifetime, right? But
Uh-huh.
you do it for two to go to those schools. And so that's one path. Um, Another path is if you're not like so good in one subject that you think you're like the top X in the country out of like billions of people, maybe in the hundreds of millions, then your best bet is to get one of these. Again, it's like we call it guaranteed entry, but to qualify, you have to jump through like a bunch of different loops. Some of them involve some kind of testing. Some of them, well, I guess it's all testing, but some tests are done repeatedly throughout the year. Some tests are done once, and if you don't do well, you're done. And there's like interviews and a bunch of because I didn't pick that route, I didn't know, but that's actually the most common for my school. The downside is if you go through this route, my school's name is Nanjing Foreign Language School, And so once you're like guaranteed entry into one of these schools, usually you have to study a foreign language as one of your majors. And that's like a big downside, right? Because I don't know.
It
I did
doesn't
not want.
contribute. Why
Uh,
is it a?
it's sort of just like an artificial constraint. Like a lot of these people
Got it.
do not want to study English or Arabic or sometimes
Yeah.
some language that only 1,000 people speak in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they want to go to Tsinghua University or Peking University,
Yeah.
and so they would rate that over being able to study what they want. So
Yeah.
they would actually go to this school and study like a super niche foreign language,
Yeah.
um, which is just, I guess, the trade-off you have to make. And so just to give some context, we have about 500 people in 1 year. The first route, probably 100 people would attempt, and like 40 people would succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And those who fail will then join whoever was trying the second,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I would say 100 plus would go to university through this route. The third is trying to go study abroad, which is
Mm-hmm.
I did.
Yeah.
And that's actually more than half
Okay.
of the entire year. So like out of 500, maybe 300 would end up studying in the US.
Oh,
So it's a lot of people.
that's why you know so many you have so many friends in the US who were
Right,
from your high school.
right.
Okay.
And it's a unique thing. Like
Yeah.
I think maybe there's like 5 other schools in China that does the same, but
Yeah.
um, and so what the net result is very, very few people. I think in my year it's like 15, so 15 out of 500 took the national like college entrance examination.
Yeah.
So again, like in a way that's good because we avoid this most stressful event in China, basically. But it's a little unfortunate for the people who had to do it. Usually, it's like their fallback option after they have failed the previous few
Mm-hmm.
is they don't really have a peer group to study with.
Yeah.
Um,
So you're
and
actually studying different sets of things if you pick different tracks.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a little tough for the people who actually take the exam because other schools have hundreds of people doing the same, and they can like sync their schedule and they
Mm-hmm.
can coordinate a lot of things. For us, it's a little tough.
Why did you pick the US track? Did it just seem like you were picking the path of less stress?
That's maybe kind of true. I
Like,
think
did you see benefits, like, more long-term benefit? Or what was the decision?
it wasn't so okay. My parents really wanted me to go abroad.
Okay.
So it was
Do you know why?
they just think education is better in
Okay.
US.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Do you think that's true now?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Maybe we can talk about why, but we can come
right.
back to that after.
And for me, I didn't really calculate it. It's more like I, well, maybe there's like two heuristics that I used back then. One is, do I want to do the others?
So you did pick the easiest thing.
Right.
You're just saying it in a better way.
Is it necessarily easy? I'm not
The-
sure.
Oh, the easier. I don't know. Yeah.
Um,
I guess
but
what the time scale that you're optimizing for also. What's
yeah.
easier now isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the long run.
Well, I know I don't want to do the second thing because I don't know if I want to study foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing, yeah, very inconveniently, I wanted to play in the basketball team in the high school, and the training time is the same time as sort of the math Olympic training path.
Okay.
I have to pick the more important thing to do here.
Uh,
So I gave up on math, and
uh-huh.
math was sort of my strongest.
Yeah.
Uh, and I also somehow gave up on coding, but yeah, I don't know why I gave up. Maybe I just did too much of it when I was in elementary school. But anyways, another heuristic I used is I just look at the people who went to different routes and succeeded across previous years, and uh, I feel like my personality and my hobbies maybe more resembles the people who have succeeded in the going abroad path. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is sort of media bias, because every year they would, newspaper would say these students, they succeeded in going to these different places. And when it's, going to going through the competition route, they would emphasize how good this guy is in that particular subject.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone succeeded in going to Harvard or I don't know
Yeah.
Princeton, they would say, "Oh, this guy has so many hobbies and they do so many different things, and they're like
Yeah.
an interesting, unique personality." And I was like, "Oh, I can do that."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um,
Wait, that's interesting because at that stage it's already, yeah, I guess it's being optimized. I guess you looked ahead and knew that to get into US universities, they look for more overall um sort
that
of,
was that was
yeah,
what the local newspaper
seem
was
to highlight.
yeah. I don't know if they're accurate sources,
Yeah.
but that was the sense I got,
Yeah.
and I like playing basketball and things like that. I was
Right.
like, that doesn't contribute to me doing well in math competition.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, and then we have this very interesting system where if you pick a route, and especially the going abroad one, you actually have to sign an agreement with the university to not participate in the college entrance examination, because you will be studying different things and your grade will be low, right? If
I see.
you then you lower the school average.
I see.
So once I pick this route, it's like somewhat confirmed, and you go study TOEFL, SAT, and yeah, you figure out yourself. So
What
that's
do you
what
mean
I
you figure out yourself?
like. There's no TOEFL SAT class in high
Oh,
school,
really?
so
Okay.
I stopped going to school basically.
What for
After
the last how many
for the
years?
last 1.5, maybe 2. Like my
Yeah.
high school is basically 1 year plus like a few months.
Okay, so were you at home or were you coordinating with friends that you made in school?
Yeah, switch back and forth. Sometimes I'm at home. Sometimes I'm go to the school library or something.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
And you're still, I guess this is not paying for school. This is,
well, there's no paying for school. Like the public
okay.
school in China is basically free.
Okay. Okay. Is it common for like, um, you said you had to figure it out for yourself, but you were going to a good high school. Um, but also like, uh, 300 of the 500 people, like 3/5
Yeah,
were doing the same path. So how
yeah,
was there no sort of systematic system to help people, or were they external ones, such as like these little businesses
yeah.
and things
Um,
like that that are like, oh, we get your kids into the top US universities, and it
yeah,
costs a bunch of money.
yeah. So that was a big industry, and my family also paid for
Mm-hmm.
one of these. But I think like that's one thing, but really uh, well, it's definitely overpriced for sure, uh, I think the actual useful stuff was mainly passed down, every year from student to student.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if I told you this before, but when I was in grade 10, which is the first high school year, I would after I've decided, okay, I'm going this route.
Mm-hmm.
my teacher would say, "Hey, like this guy just got into Yale.
Yeah.
Go talk to him."
Uh-huh.
So I would just walk to his classroom
Yeah.
and grab one of his classmates and be like, "Is this guy here?" And
Yeah.
then he will then go grab that guy. I was like, "Hey, my name is Shin, and I'm interested in applying to US colleges. What's
Uh-huh.
your advice?" Then he would just stand there and tell me in 5 minutes what I should do.
Uh-huh.
I took notes and I
Uh-huh.
started doing those things. That's kind of how it went.
Got it. So imagine you're in school now, or imagine someone in your position
Uh-huh.
were to ask you, what should I do? What would
Uh-huh.
you tell them?
I think, well, the thing is, I think
For US universities, you mean?
for Chinese students applying to US universities,
Okay.
so I don't know at this point if I'm still sort of I'm
Relevant.
pretty sure I don't know the latest.
Uh-huh.
But back then it was rather simple. So if you do well in TOEFL and SAT,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're like you can't do too bad. Like
Mm-hmm.
you might not get into top 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think top 20 is like guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
If you just apply to all 20, right, and
Yeah.
hope one of them took you, it's
Yeah.
99%. And that's what I did. Like
Yeah.
I don't really stand out in any particular way. And
Yeah.
with the education system in China, you study 9 subjects. There's no way you do a bunch of extracurricular activity as well. So for me, the only thing that stood out for me is just my test scores are really high.
Got it.
and that was it.
So wait, so I'm curious. At least when I was applying, I guess we applied around the same time. Oh, actually, I think you applied a little sooner than me. But I was told that SATs and TOEFL were just, well, I don't know about TOEFL. Well, I know what it is, but I didn't
Yeah.
experience it. Was told that SAT was sort of like a necessary but not sufficient condition.
Yeah.
And once you cross this SAT thing, they actually look at the other aspects.
Yeah.
Where, even though I was in Trinidad and did exams in the Caribbean and in Trinidad, and they don't really recognize those exams, they recognize how well you do in that context as some kind of, a proxy for how good you are. And then, so I'm wondering with you, you're saying you did well in the SATs. And so you cross this bar. There must have been other things in your package that help you distinguish yourself amongst equivalent people from China who got the same grades as you. Was it the basketball? Because no one else was focusing on extracurricular.
I mean, I think at that point it's really luck.
Mm-hmm.
So how should I say? Like my application package consists of the following things, right? So I have a few extracurricular activities, but all of them, like they're unique in a way that's mediocre.
Uh-huh.
I do a bunch of things,
Uh-huh.
but other people can do a bunch of other things, and you can never say this bunch of things is better than that bunch of things. I honestly did not think anything stood out. I have a personal statement,
Mm-hmm.
and the personal statement is sort of the thing that you're paying money for when you hire external counselor, and they would like look at
Mm-hmm.
it with you. I have a personal statement that's kind of unique.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about their like life stories in their personal statement.
Yeah.
I think I took a bit more risk, and
Mm-hmm.
I sort of just described one of these like cycling hiking trips I did,
Uh-huh.
and there's nothing in it about things I've done. It's
Uh-huh.
really like, honestly, if you ask me now, do I think it's a good idea? I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think it's high risk, and it showed up as high risk because all these top schools absolutely all rejected me, right? I
Uh-huh.
think UPenn is like a single exception, but every other like top school that's ranked in the top 10, 15, they
Yeah.
just reject. And I applied to all of them because I
Uh-huh.
know the chances are really low.
Yeah.
Um, so I think maybe like that's one thing that I'm just betting on my luck, right? If this guy
Mm-hmm.
reading my application is happy with the way that I described my sort of passion for life,
Yeah.
it took me. But otherwise, what am I talking about here?
Uh,
Um, but otherwise, yeah, I think the only thing that stood out was my SAT score. It wasn't perfect, but it's really hard for a Chinese student to get even close to perfect.
mm-hmm.
Uh,
You mean because of the
the language
English? Yeah.
area, yeah.
Got it.
So like I can't even finish the reading section.
Yeah.
It's just a struggle to like read all the questions.
Yeah. It's a
So
struggle for me yeah. So I can't
so
even imagine. Yeah.
yeah, so I think I have like probably top 10 score in my school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which again, there's like 10 other people with higher scores, but I think at that point it's more just luck. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess what age should someone start preparing for the US education system if they're in China?
Well, it goes early and early, but in my time,
Yeah.
I think the median is maybe when you enter high school, you start thinking about it.
Yeah.
And in grade 11 is when you really sprint for the tests.
Got it.
And after you're done with the tests, you're like kind of done. You just write your personal statement, which
Yeah.
takes a bunch of time, and then
Yeah.
you hit submit.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. So now it's like kindergarten, probably, since it's getting earlier and earlier.
Right. I think yeah.
You start doing the extracurriculars from kindergarten.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess lucky in that way.
Okay, maybe we can talk about UPenn a bit.
Mhm.
So I guess going through all of this, what did you want to be? And I asked that because I want to know what did you want to be, and how did that influence what major you picked to do at UPenn?
Yeah. I had no idea.
Uh huh. Not even a rough. Okay, like you knew you didn't want to be an artist.
Right. Well, because I suck at it. Right.
Okay, right. So you're good at mental math and coding.
Uh-huh. I wasn't
Um,
that good at coding at the end, even.
okay.
It's just like, the things that I had to do to get through life.
Uh
And
huh.
so I
Uh
was
huh.
pretty good at coding, but
Yeah.
uh,
It's
I
like just
guess
because you can breathe doesn't mean you're good
right.
at breathing.
Okay, let me go back because there's a funny story I want to share.
Uh huh.
So when I was doing this coding competition in grade 6, that's when I was like 12 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this thing basically uniquely determines whether I can go to this good high school or not.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-hour coding competition, and you have 4 questions. Um, and I think I solved the first 3 pretty quickly. But the fourth one is honestly, now I think about it, it's pretty easy. But back then, it's a little
Uh
hard.
huh.
It's like going through kind of a maze, and you're trying to navigate your way out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did an algorithm that does it. But the requirement is after you hit enter, uh, it has to go out in 2 seconds. But my
Mm-hmm.
algorithm is like brute force. So
Mm-hmm.
it would, as the maze sort of get larger and larger, it's not
Yeah.
really a maze, but whatever. As it gets larger, it will scale exponentially. And so
Uh huh.
eventually my thing would not work.
Uh huh.
Um, but I don't know what I was thinking then, but I was like, I don't think they put so much effort into the evaluation criteria. I think they just check whether the answer is correct.
Uh
And
huh.
because I did the first 3 questions so fast, I had like 2 hours not knowing what to do. So I just
Uh huh.
ran my brute force program
Yeah.
for all the possible input.
Yeah.
I wrote the actual program as if input is this,
Uh huh.
output this number.
Oh, I see.
I just did like an if statements for that
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
and that was it. Um, and I think I ended up getting the highest score on that question out of everyone,
Uh,
even though I actually did not do it, right?
uh.
Um, and I think that might be the reason I was able to go to the high school. So,
That's so funny.
but anyways, yeah. So I I think one of the things, maybe we can spend a bit more time later, but one of the things I was thinking was during this whole time, I'm just doing sort of what's required. And because what's required is a lot of stuff, there is no pick and choose. It's just like get all the basic things done, and you're at 110% already.
Uh-huh.
And so now I'm in college, which is when I have to choose. There's nothing, or I have no, I haven't practiced choosing at all
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
Um, so I just I go back to heuristics. I think of, okay, what am I, good at? And the funny thing is, I'm not even that good at these things now, but I just, think of like a time-weighted keyword that's associated with me. I think people think of me when they think, oh, he's good at math. And
Uh-huh.
let me study math first. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and then the second heuristic is, okay, let's look at people around me. What do they study? And because it's UPenn, and UPenn has this business school that's kind of unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wharton School of Business, and people like to take some class there. And it's like, okay, let me also go there and have a degree from the Wharton School. So I have so I took a finance degree.
Mm-hmm.
There's like zero thought put into other than the two that I just mentioned. There's zero thought that
Uh-huh.
went to what should I study. And that's like the whole 4 years. I never, second doubt myself. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So during those 4 years, you were just like, I'm gonna do a finance degree and I'm gonna do it well.
Uh, yeah, kind of.
But you were thinking about what job would I get after and things like that. Oh no.
Not really. Like, people really try to get internships during summer,
Yeah.
and I didn't. I really did not try. Like,
So what did you do?
the first summer I went back to China and I taught in this like English, like it's like a external school for people who want to do well in TOEFL and SAT.
Okay.
And yeah, there's zero thing I need to prepare because I did it already, and yeah, so people were trying to get banking internships and whatnot. I just went back and taught English
Yeah.
for a summer.
Yeah.
And then the second summer, that was when I was thinking maybe I should do a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Is it
I
because
was.
you didn't do the internship? So you realized you couldn't get a job right out of college. So you're like, I should do a PhD.
It didn't have
That's some
that.
of my friends.
I didn't have that long of a thought process. I think it's because one of my friend who was like 2 years older than me, he wanted to do a PhD at that time. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I should do a PhD.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the whole thought
Uh-huh.
process. And this guy, I think he went to U Chicago PhD program, but never finished. So
Mm-hmm.
he abandoned also.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Wait, so
so
you really had no idea of what would be the end?
yeah, no,
Okay.
absolutely not. Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, not that maybe we can get into this after, but this is definitely related to the path dependence that we're talking about. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. But all your friends definitely did, right? Because you know, you're telling me that Wharton is kind of
Yeah.
like the Slytherin,
Yeah.
and Slytherin is like ambitious and
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
also some other bad things. But it seems that you were surrounded by these people who were set on getting these top jobs, but you somehow were not concerned by it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned. Maybe it's just because when I look at, the graduating class, most of them have a pretty decent job,
Yeah.
and I was like, I
You're like,
think
you'll be fine.
I'm not the dumbest,
Yeah.
so by that logic, I will have a job.
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
think that's the whole thought process I had.
I
Uh,
see. But they
and
were doing internships. So were you not concerned that like looking back, do you think you could have done that more effectively?
I think I would have tried more things. Like I feel like I didn't really use my undergrad to try a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about why I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of reason why. I don't think like I don't think of could have done better in the how do I say? I don't think there's like a single metric. Going back, I wouldn't know the single metric that I should use. So I don't know what's to improve throughout this process. Had I known in 2011, which is when I went to UPenn, the exact thing I wanted in 2015 when I was coming out of UPenn, sure, I could have, optimized better, but that's
Right.
not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did take my time, and then in junior, which is the third year of college, I again did the easiest thing, which is I look around and say, what's the most common job that people get, and it's
Mm-hmm.
banking.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, that's probably not too hard.
Yeah.
What's hard about investment banking? So I sent out resumes, and I got an investment banking internship,
Mm-hmm.
which confirmed my previous hypotheses. Right?
That you
It's
would
not
get it. Yeah.
that I would have got it.
Wait, but let's talk about why you didn't try that many things. You said we can talk about it. I'm curious. Was it something that was sort of built into you
Uh,
growing up?
yeah, I think there's a few reasons. One is I just first I guess I have a maybe somewhat a relaxed personality, so I wasn't really pushing it in the first year, and I somehow thought that, I mean, I will be, like this moment of realization would just come to me, and I would, at some point, realize what I want to do, which is a completely incorrect intuition.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know it back then, and I was kind of just sitting around and not too worried, to be honest. Like I was not stressed at all, and I wasn't going around asking people what I should do. I was like, I'll find out one day.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that's one of the reasons I did not. I think the second reason is, again, like growing up, there's not much to explore.
Yeah.
9 subjects you have to study, and that's the 9. And
Yeah.
there's no way you have time to study a 10th.
Mm-hmm.
And so in college, you don't know what you don't know, and I don't know there's so many different things out there to try.
Yeah.
And to find out if you like it or not. Like I don't even know these things existed.
Yeah.
Tech and finance and consulting and
Yeah. Yeah.
all the popular job paths. I had no
Yeah.
idea, and so I didn't even think of, or I don't know what to. And maybe like slightly tangential, but I kind of regret that I did not spend a year or maybe a semester abroad. My mentality back then was, oh, I was already abroad, I was
Yeah.
already halfway across the world. But
Yeah.
had I known that I would spend
The
the
rest of your
next
life.
13 years in the same place, I would totally have tried a different place. Yeah. So I think those are the main reasons, like not being used to having agency, and not knowing the options.
I guess this idea of not being used to having agency, which comes from, the whole education system that you grew up in. And I guess that leads me to ask, what was the experience like coming to the US from China, from like maybe like a cultural and a value standpoint? And this question really comes from my wife, who knew I was going to interview you, she's also Chinese, and she had a bunch of these types of questions for you. Um, and you know, in particular, as you would know, hopefully you can get into their different values, and also of me being international. You know, your own culture has good and bads, and you come to a new culture and you see good and bads also, and you have to pick which ones you want to hold on to and which values you want to accept and adopt. And I'm curious for you, which ones did you let go of and hold on to, um, from both sides, I guess. That's probably a deep question to ask. I don't know if you have thought about it enough.
Probably not. I think when I got here, the main thing was just trying to understand what people are saying, like
You mean
in a literal
in a
sense.
literal sense? They
Yeah.
spoke English too quickly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the first year is basically just to fake it, right? I go
Uh-huh.
to the dining hall.
Uh-huh.
There's the way that dining halls in UPenn work is most of the entries, they are behind this like protective glass thing,
Uh-huh.
and you have to tell the lady who works there
Uh-huh.
to get them for you.
Uh-huh.
Uh, First of all, when I learned English, it's like, textbook English.
Yeah.
I had no idea what these things are. Like asparagus? What, are you
Uh-huh.
kidding me? Never.
Uh-huh.
And they call things so differently, right? Like French toast. To me, it's just bread, right?
Uh-huh.
What's a French toast?
Yeah.
And so ordering at dining hall was a disaster. And I learned to just point and say this, and
Uh-huh.
this. Um,
这个.
um, and then yeah,
What's
sitting
that? That's
with
Mandarin for that one?
for this one.
This one. Okay.
And that one is something we should not speak.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said it. I only said one of them.
And then when I sit with a bunch of people who's either American or are pretty fluent in English,
Yeah.
and I just try to pick up things and smile, but
Yeah.
certainly not to speak, right?
Uh-huh.
So that was my first year.
But I guess it's interesting. Did you attract yourself, or did you find yourself attracted to more similar people like the Chinese students who were in the
Oh,
US? Or
yeah, 100%.
okay.
It's really just people who came from China.
Yeah.
Because none of them are able to have a full conversation with anyone.
Uh-huh.
So how do you have
So you all switch to Mandarin and hang out.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay.
I think maybe for me it's like slightly less because I was also rowing, and
Yeah.
the rowing team was, I don't know, for some reason not only all American but all white.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in this weird like back and forth between full Mandarin and a bunch of like 2 meters tall white men.
Yeah. But
But-
your social group was really
and the rowing crew.
and the run crew.
'Cause
Okay.
we're forced to spend like 30 hours a week together.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, the casual social is for sure Chinese, especially from China. What is there any value? I mean, I think one thing that's that stood out back then was the Chinese people who are able to make it into academically much stronger than the average American who make it into UPenn. I think the acceptance rate is like 0.1%
Yeah.
for Chinese applicant and like 10% for American applicant.
Yeah.
So
I
everyone
thought that was true of international students in general. At least my experience was that
yeah.
the international students have a harder time, and so the
Right.
bar is kind of higher.
If they group by country of origin or not.
True. Probably. I don't know. That's just speculation.
But yeah, so people, the first impression is Chinese students definitely studies more than the average American classmates. And it was certainly something that I continued to do myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied a bunch, and I was rowing too. So I basically spent all my time either rowing or studying, and doing zero other things for my first year. What other values? I don't think that it's funny to say now, but I don't think I was exposed to the American, values enough just because
Uh-huh.
I occupy my time so fully with these two things,
Yeah.
that I went to zero party when I was in,
Mm-hmm.
or try to go to frat. Yeah, like I didn't do a bunch of American things. I
Uh-huh.
think the way to summarize it.
Yeah, yeah. I think you probably got all of it in with rowing, which is, I don't know, feels quite white and American to me.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like the most Ivy League thing.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
was like because I rode dragon boat,
Uh-huh.
right? Yeah, in China.
Yeah.
And when I was rowing there, I saw people rowing like an actual boat.
Yeah.
And so I had this vague idea that I'm going to try it in the US. And then
Yeah.
when I got to UPenn, someone walked up to me with a flyer in his hand. He's like, "Hey, you want to try this thing?" And I
Right.
was like, "Wow, what a coincidence. That's what I wanted." And then I did that for for a whole year.
So just curious, how did badminton fit into all of this?
It doesn't. Like
So you only played badminton later on again?
well, I played badminton when I was young.
Yeah.
I was very fat when I was in elementary school, and so like when I say very fat, I mean like actually obese. Right? And
You need to send me a pic. We need a link to a picture.
right. And my parents, they want me to lose weight, and
Yeah.
so I was always taking lessons in different sports. I think I started with ping pong, and then I took like a year or two of tennis, and I took badminton. So that was when I was playing.
Got
Uh,
it.
and I played a little bit in high school, not really, and then I did not play almost at all in college.
Got it. Got it. Before we leave the UPenn, I'm wondering what suggestions do you have for Chinese students trying, like navigating a move to the US to study?
Well, I think, well, this is maybe a little hard to answer in one
Mm-hmm.
shot, but for
Mm-hmm.
me, I really don't force myself to any predefined notion of success in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think well, before I came here, people were talking about how Chinese students, they don't really fit in uh,
Mm-hmm.
with the society here, with the groups here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was true with me. Like I didn't even attempt. Right? I was just
Uh-huh.
like really comfortable with this group of people. But I think importantly, I didn't hold that against myself, and
Yeah.
I wasn't like stressed about it.
Yeah.
But I think there are people who try very hard to certain criteria of success that's not defined by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those people are bothered. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't really hold a really high standard for myself in kind of anything. I was just like, let me try to figure out what I can do, but then also actually like work hard and try to do as much as I can.
Yeah.
I think the mentality really helped me, and I think that's like maybe a slightly underrated aspect is like I have friends who are really unhappy, and I
Mm-hmm.
think they're unhappy not because their grades are bad. Usually their
Mm-hmm.
grades are pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
but they feel lonely and they feel they miss home. I think certainly some of it is true,
Mm-hmm.
but I wonder how much of it comes from this uh, feeling of missing some sort of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I I saw their friend group, right? Like they probably had this roughly the same friend group as mine. Like that friend group to me, if I'm in China, I would have roughly the same size of a friend group. It's not like if we
Yeah.
speak different language, I would suddenly have 200 good friends.
Yeah.
Um, and so I wonder how much of it comes from constantly reminding themselves that, oh, I'm not part of this country and I'm not such
Mm-hmm.
into the mainstream community in a way.
Yeah.
But I was really never bothered by that. So
Yeah.
that was good for me.
Yeah. I don't think what you said is underrated. I think it's true of what brings a lot of people unhappiness and sort of this idea of expectations, meeting expectations formed by other people, and not really just sort of being happy with their own progress and um, looking at themselves in isolation. Sort of like happiness is or success is defined. Maybe going back to what you said about success, for them it's usually defined in comparison. Um, yeah, and I think that brings a lot of people, in university especially, unhappiness. So, how about we get into what you did after, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned, the summer of my junior year, I did investment banking, and I absolutely hated the job.
Wait, where
Uh,
were you at? Is this the one where they yelled at you?
no, it's the one before that.
Okay.
So as I said, I was looking around and I saw people do investment banking most often. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, let me find an investment banking job. Where's the most easy place I can find an investment banking job? It's
Mm-hmm.
in Hong Kong
Okay.
because it's one of the biggest financial centers. Candidate group is much smaller. So
Okay.
everyone applied to New York investment banking, but
Yeah.
only like, mainly Asians would apply to. So naturally, you already have a much smaller competitive pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just sent my resume to the big banks in Hong Kong, and I
Mm-hmm.
got an offer from Barclays,
Mm-hmm.
which to be fair, back then was like one of the well, it's a big name, but it's probably one of the worst among the big banks. Like
Okay.
Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley is top. And
Yeah.
this is like near the bottom. But I was pretty happy with it because I I feel like I spent zero effort and I got this like big name bank. So I took the offer. Um, and I didn't like the job because first of all I didn't understand the business model. So a lot of work feels like busy work to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of work. It's like 100-hour worth of work per week.
Uh-huh.
And I I was not driven because I didn't understand the business motivation of a lot of things I was doing. Um, and because I didn't enjoy my work quality was not high, and
Mm-hmm.
they did not give me a return offer either. And I was
Mm-hmm.
not planning on returning if had they given me one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so when I was in senior year, I had to like re-recruit, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which is not well, it's not uncommon, but not the most popular option. Usually, you want to return to where you interned.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and then I guess in senior year, I learned of this concept of like quant trading.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this is perfect. I do mental math, and
Uh-huh.
they
Uh-huh.
test for mental math in interviews. Yeah, I tried for that. I got a bunch of offers,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know the distinction between different tradings too well.
Yeah.
I just got a few offers, and in the end, I have this firm in New York and another firm in Philadelphia called Susquehanna International Group.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to stay in Philadelphia anymore. So that
Mm-hmm.
was the heuristic. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, you just take the New York offer.
Right. Okay.
Uh,
Wait, I want to like stop for a second because
okay.
this is the something that I want to get into, this
Uh-huh.
um quant stuff.
Yeah.
I think you're really underselling it. But I just want people to know, to have an idea, like as you were saying, when you were in school, when you were a kid, you didn't know what these types of jobs were.
Uh-huh.
And this idea of being a quant, this idea of being a quant, let's talk about what that is and how
Okay.
it's actually pretty well respected.
Okay.
and pretty hard to get that job that you talked about at Susquehanna, which is just known as like SIG or SIG for some people. But it's a pretty big deal, so I don't want you to pass it on. So first, maybe tell me what is a quant?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess first I have to explain how this business makes money,
Uh
and
huh.
then I can explain how the position I was interviewing for was helping the business.
Yeah.
Um, so there are, well, actually there's quite a few different varieties, but let's just say one of them is a firm like SIG.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to oversimplify their business model, right?
Uh
But
huh.
basically, you can imagine that they have a market making business where uh, if someone comes to you and say, I would like to either buy or sell a certain unit of anything. I'm doing this in a very abstracted way.
Yeah.
So some people come to you, and then you are in the business of always be available and always come up with a price or two prices at which one you're willing to sell and one you're willing to buy this particular thing that this person is interested in transacting in. And your job, why do we call it a quant, is because it's quantitative in nature, and you're trying to over time statistically give these buy and sell offers such that should people keep transacting with you, you would make money.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a very high level summary of the business model. The position I was interviewing for is actually a trader position. Um, so you can think of them as operators slash risk managers of the quant trading platform slash software. So what I described, being available to make bid and ask offers, uh, this is all automated at this point. So the process is really, someone hitting up your API endpoint somewhere and say, give me a price. And then your machine would take a previously configured model and compute to price and give it to them. And your job as a trader is to operate this machine, like monitor how much risk it's taking. Is it functioning correctly? And when you, over time, accumulate some sort of balance, you would hedge it. You would figure out how to uh, long or short some other assets so that your overall exposure to the market is low, and figure out how to tune your algorithm such that it over time makes more money. Um, so that's kind of what the job is. Why it's respected, I don't know. I probably because it makes a bunch of money, but uh, I yeah, I don't know a fundamental reason why you should expect such person. But it's
Why you should respect such a person? That's
uh-huh.
okay. Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
I was saying the job is well respected, and it's because it makes a lot of money, right?
I see.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like a somewhat hard to get into. It's not
Oh, yeah.
it's not really hard. It's hard in the sense that you have to be good at certain things that not everyone is good at. But
Mm-hmm.
once you're good at those things, it's just a job.
But you have
So
to. What are the things you need to be good at?
in general, just probability. Well, not like real probability, but mental probability,
Mm.
like exercises, tricks. So and brain teasers. These are things that you can really prepare for. It's not
Yeah.
really solving unsolved math questions. It's really if I come to you and say, hey, over the next 2 days, uh, there's like a 50% probability to rain. The probability to rain tomorrow is 70%.
Mm-hmm.
What's the probability for it to rain the day after? Right? It's like things like this. And they may ask you like, what's 24 times 26? and you have to answer 5 seconds, right?
Okay.
But it's all tricks
Yeah.
because like 24 times 26, oh, it's 25 squared minus 1. And then you can just
Ah. Uh-huh.
So yeah, so that's kind of what that job is. And funny enough, I thought that's the job I was interviewing for, but the New York job that I actually took is not really that.
This
Uh,
is
no, it's the first job. It was back then. It was called KGS Alpha Capital Markets.
okay.
It's still in the business of making bid and ask, but it's fully manual. So
Okay.
you've watched like The Big Short
Mm-hmm.
or like Wolf of Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. You're
Mm-hmm.
on the phone, like actually saying bid and ask offers, and
Mm-hmm.
you're actually saying done. Thank you for the trade, and you hang up.
Mm-hmm.
That was the business, and the firm, the founders were traders at Solomon Brothers when it sort of blew up. So, it definitely inherited a lot of the culture from
Ah.
that era also. But yeah, this is the job where they yell at me a
Okay.
lot.
Right. So your first job out of college, you get yelled at.
Right. It's
Uh-huh.
it's certainly very reminiscent of the
The
elementary
Chinese.
school days.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wait, can you just give some context? Like, how often would you get yelled at? What
Uh-huh.
would it be for? How would you respond to it?
Yeah, I think the average frequency is per day, but
Okay.
it's definitely very clustered. So sometimes you get yelled at 5 times a day. Sometimes you don't get yelled at for like 3 days in a row.
Okay.
You get yelled at for all sorts of things. There's this one day I went to the office, and in the morning I have to prepare like risk report. So I prepared the risk report and I put it on the head trader's desk, and I left to get cereal for breakfast. And in the meantime, when I was getting cereal, some clients sent out some like big auction that we should, promptly propagate the information to our clients. And I was not on my desk. And I'm usually the one who's like monitoring and sending these out. But I was getting cereal, right?
Uh-huh.
And I got back to, well, keep in mind that's like 7:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's usually not busy. When I got back, the head trader was very angry. He's like, almost I fired you. And
Wow.
you're just getting your, well, I'm not gonna swear here, but he's
Uh-huh.
he's swelling a bunch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that was a bad day. But
Uh-huh.
things like this happen on a daily basis.
Uh,
And not just me, my coworker on the same trading desk also.
Uh-huh.
And I think I maybe had it not too rough. Oh, it was pretty rough for me, but he was telling me, and he's like 3 years earlier than me on this desk, and he
Mhm.
told me when they started, he would go back home and cry
Oh
every
my God.
night.
Oh God.
The amount of yelling that's been going on.
Damn. And he
And he's
stayed
been
for so long? Why did he stay?
right, probably for too long.
Yeah. Is the money that good that you stay?
No, I don't think so. It's just like again, like I have a pretty high tolerance of things,
Right.
and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna try it and see how this goes. So I have this weird visa issue as
Yeah.
a foreign national, especially as a Chinese.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I don't know if it makes sense to switch if I don't get the lottery, and
Yeah.
I never got the lottery for what it's worth.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't really switch. Also, the other thing is, when you switch, you usually switch to like a different desk doing the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't really quite like this thing I'm doing anyways. So I
Mhm.
wasn't really motivated to like go do the same thing somewhere else.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know if that's the right mentality to have, but I just ended up not switching
Mhm.
until the third year came up, and I still haven't gotten my lottery. And I was like, okay, at this rate, I'm either going to grad school or
Mhm.
China.
Yeah.
And So I started applying to grad school, and then I got into Princeton uh, before the lottery came out. So I just like I told them that I'm going to Princeton, and then the lottery came out, and I got the lottery. So technically, I can still tell Princeton I'm not going,
Yeah.
and then keep staying at this job. But I was kind of fed up, to be
Yeah.
honest. So I was like, let me just go to Princeton.
Uh
Um,
huh. Uh huh.
yeah.
Wait, can we talk a little bit more about what it's like navigating the job market as an international, especially from China? I'm just wondering, if there's anybody from China who already listened to all the advice that you gave about school and these things. If there's any more,
Yeah.
um,
Maybe here is a point to do like a soft plug,
uh
but
huh,
I did have I,
a good lawyer.
no, no, a long time ago I did have a podcast. I just want to mention that
Oh, right, right, yeah, yeah, yeah. We
series
go
of
ahead.
like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I did a series of interviews with people who had different jobs. And I basically asked them, how do you get the job? Do you like the job? How to get the job, etc.
Yeah,
It's in Mandarin Chinese. So, if you if you want to know more, there's more and we
yeah.
can
Maybe we
post it.
can link it. Definitely would love people who want to listen to find it easily.
Yeah. I guess for me it's always just a numbers game. Like I
Mm-hmm.
never took it so seriously to say that, or took myself so seriously to say that I must have this job at this place.
Yeah,
And I was just saying, if I apply to 100 place, what's the chance of they all reject me?
yeah,
Low, right?
uh,
So that's what I did, and I was applying liberally, and but then I realized, oh wait, there's a cost to applying more, because sometimes the jobs you apply to are not very related,
mm-hmm.
and it spreads your energy. So you're not well prepared for any interview. I remember
Yeah,
I walked into like one of the Blackstone interviews, because
yeah,
Blackstone is such a big group, and
uh
they
huh,
have probably 50 different departments, if not more. I walked into this interview, uh, and keep in mind that UPenn is very good at getting their students interviews. And they have this interview center that you can just stay there all day and do all your interviews in one place if you need to.
You mean like virtual?
No, it's like a physical interview center, and the company would send people to be there to
Oh,
interview.
wow. Okay.
And you don't have to walk anywhere. You just stay there
Yeah.
and have all your interview in one place.
Yeah.
So that was probably like my sixth interview of the day. I've been
Yeah.
there all day long, and I walked into this. I still don't know what their group name was, but it's like a Blackstone group. And their opening question is, "Oh, hey, do you know what we do?"
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't. That was, um, but yeah, that was the cost of applying too liberally.
Yeah.
So at some point I decided to like optimize a little bit and say, if the interview preparation involves statistics and math and probability and some coding, I
Then you
will
do it.
apply. I also strategically gave up on all the jobs where cover letter is required, because GPT was not available back then. And
Yeah.
for me to like do a letter per job is just
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
So I only applied to jobs that require resume only, that is like stats and math. So yeah, so I was able to apply to like 200 jobs, and I
Yeah.
got two offers in the end.
Oh, really 1 in 100. Okay.
Most of them
um,
just never reply to me, so it's not that hard.
yeah.
Like me, it's one click, and for me, it's
Yeah.
probably one click to reject me as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you didn't really I guess although there is a sort of maybe I'm wrong, but I think there is a disadvantage applying as an international student.
Oh, sorry,
And you
I didn't touch on that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I was kind of taking it for granted that it's just like it just make it harder.
Mhm.
Because a lot of these places, they either have a hard constraint saying that
Mhm.
you cannot require work sponsorship,
Mhm.
or they have like a soft constraint, meaning they put you at a relative disadvantage if you require. I don't know. There's no like other navigation other than you just have to compensate for your disadvantage by uh,
Applying for
for
more.
more being better when it's like soft constraint.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I think about it.
Okay, so let's say you finish this first job where you get yelled at all the time and you go back to Princeton to do your masters. I'm curious, how much do you think this masters helped your career later on? Was there value in the masters, or was there value in taking time away from your
Yeah,
current job to just reevaluate and be
yeah,
around more people again?
yeah. I think mainly the latter. I think in terms of like things that I actually learned. Well, okay, maybe I'm the exceptions here, but I do think the things I learned was used in my
Uh-huh.
actual job,
Uh-huh.
which I don't think it's the most common case. Um, but again, it's not a lot. So I learned Python,
Wait,
which
you learned Python in your masters?
uh-huh.
You took okay. Interesting.
So I learned Python. That was well, or I should say, I learned the syntax of Python.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like all all the techniques are
Right.
there.
Mm-hmm.
I know SQL before, which certainly was handy after. I learned a bunch of like statistics, mostly statistics, like econometric stuff, which I used quite a lot in the job after Princeton. But I feel like these things, well, okay, this is biased because it's always hard to learn technical things when you're at work. Um, so maybe I'm underrating these. Maybe these are actually helpful that I learned them in Princeton. But also the fact that I can have like 2 years to just think about what I value and um, what I want to do is helpful. Um, it's a little hard for me to say that I figured it out back then
I was
because
gonna say you went back to do a similar
yeah.
job.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so it's actually not very similar.
Okay.
It's a lot more systematic and
Right.
a lot less yelling. And
Okay.
that was like one of the main metrics I was optimizing for when I was coming out of Princeton. I was like,
Yeah.
no more yelling,
No more yelling. Okay.
no more yelling, and more like thinking about stuff. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would. Well, okay, I don't know if I would be a good trader had I stayed at that job because
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like it's not enough information in some sense. You just like, well, in a meta way, I should know it's enough information because you're playing the statistics game, and every trade you will basically 50% make or lose money. But I never enjoyed that process so much, and I wanted something that's like slightly higher conviction, slightly longer uh, turnaround time in terms of like the project length, and more thought out, coming to a conclusion or something. Um, so I guess in this sense, I kind of have figured something out. But if you look at the industry, yeah, I did go back to finance in a slightly different way. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I was wondering if you think getting the masters had an impact on your career.
Oh, I see.
What impact did it have?
Yeah,
But yeah, I think you answered it. Unless there's anything else.
well, I think so. So, uh, I think getting a master's. Okay, I guess there's a few things I want to say. The first thing I want to say is, um, people used to say you only get a master's if you don't, if you want to switch industry, switch job, you don't like what you're currently doing, or some people say you're not going to make it here or something, which I think is true. Uh, I think the opportunity cost of a master's is well, the longer you wait after you graduate from undergrad, the higher it is. So the master itself is like more than $100,000, and then 2 years of unearned income. You know, if you work in finance and you're like 3 years out, uh, and then you also have, when you come out of masters, you're also kind of downgraded. So overall, I'd say like it's like easily close to $1 million in terms of
Mhm.
financial opportunity cost.
Mhm.
Um, so I do agree with the statement, but I want to emphasize that usually when people make the statement of you only do a master's when you want to switch, there's usually a negative connotation attached to the action.
Mhm.
Uh, you are sort of admitting defeat in a way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that's not good because uh, it's like it's very normal to not have the job you want when you first come out of college. You know, especially if you come from an environment where you had no agency before, uh,
Mhm.
and you did not know of all the options out there. And so being able to recognize that this is not for you and being able to make the switch in a very clean and sort of not rushed way uh, is, I think, a very valuable thing. And so even if there's a big opportunity cost associated with it, I think the upside of having a job that like really satisfies you, or having something else figured out, is like way better than sticking around and keep earning the high income, but also bearing this ongoing cost of doing something that you might not enjoy as much.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to make that two things clear. If you're working in quant trading and you're like, I really lack this skill that I would learn in Princeton that would make me a better quant trader, then do not go to do the masters. It's a waste of time and money. Um, but if you want to switch, then switch as cleanly and as quickly as you can. Is the way to go.
Mhm. I guess how do you balance knowing when to switch and when to keep going? When do you know?
That I don't know. I think it takes different people different amount of time to arrive at the conclusion, and it probably took me a bit too long. I probably should have switched like the first, or if not the second year, is probably enough.
Yeah.
The fact that it took me 3 years is mainly because I don't have a sample to know the benchmark, and so
Mhm.
even though the work environment is really bad,
Yeah.
um, I I just don't have a strong enough sort of control to tell me that, okay, I should get the hell out of here as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And so and that again maybe comes back to like not having explored enough and had enough work experience before I had this full-time job.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, everyone can take their time.
Mhm. And how come you decide when you went back to do your masters? Were there any thoughts again about doing a PhD, or did your views on that change?
Yeah, so I guess I omitted why I stopped thinking about doing a PhD.
Uh huh.
So I was going to do like an economics or finance type of PhD. Um, but then after that, like summer of doing research, and then the year after also, I was like, okay, if I do a PhD, it means I have to spend 6 years studying a problem. Uh, which problem should I study?
Uh huh.
And I thought about it. I was like, okay, maybe I don't know what I want to study for 6 years.
Yeah.
And also, I also have a fear of, um, and I think this fear is like a little overblown and maybe wrong even, but I kind of want to be the guy who is changing the world than
Mm-hmm.
describing the world.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of economics research is really describing the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very valuable insights, but it's just like describing, right, in an insightful scientific way.
Uh-huh.
And that I did not want to do. And so I think these two things combined just kind of pushed me out of that path. And so when I went back, I don't think I considered PhD again. I was kind of just like going back for visa reason, but also just wanted to like figure out a bunch of things, but wasn't.
Okay, so before we leave the education, I wanted to get back to a point that we talked about very early when I asked you, when you said your parents wanted you to go to the US to study because they thought the education was better. And I was like, do you think it is? And you said yes. So I want to
Oh
kind
yeah,
of, now that we finished your education, I want to touch on it again and
yeah,
understand why it's better. And if you still, you clearly think it's true now. So yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think for university, I would say I still think that's definitely true. Younger for education for younger children, it might be slightly less clear cut. Um, so for university again, like you just have. Well, I don't know how much is related to me going to UPenn, but UPenn it feels like a big buffet, and you do whatever you want, right? There's like some constraints, but they're kind of easy to get by. So I had a lot of agency in UPenn, and that was stressful, but that was good. The second thing, I guess, from a utilitarian point of view, the signaling effect of a US degree is much stronger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless you are from the top two universities in China. In general, like people have not heard of the other 10 good schools. And so,
You
uh,
mean in the rest of the world, but in China, everyone knows.
oh, in China for sure, but
Yeah.
uh, I think
Globally, it's
a lot of people go to Chinese undergrad thinking they will do like a US master's or something,
okay.
and then eventually maybe work here. And so I think uh, like the utilitarian value is definitely there. The ability, the exposure was very good. Like I think if I stayed in China, I would be exposed to roughly the same thing, right? Slightly different city, different friend group, but it's hard to imagine such a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, I think it's just exposure to different culture and different ways of life, and it's so different, and people here are much more open about the differences. Right?
Mm-hmm.
China is always more like there are things you're not supposed to talk about, and
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing is, I think it just makes me a little more confident in terms of um, being able to communicate cross culturally with different kind of personalities. I think in China it's still kind of homogeneous in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's very valuable. Yeah, I don't think you're better at solving math questions coming out of U.S. schools than Chinese schools, but I think that's like not that important at that point.
Mm-hmm. So coming out of Princeton, you went to AQR.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this was again kind of, was it kind of like SIG where
Uh,
yeah,
no. So yeah. So these we're kind of getting into
the differences. So
the detail of how they're different.
okay,
And
maybe we
actually,
don't need to unless you want to. I don't know.
I can briefly explain, but they're
Yeah.
actually quite different.
Okay.
And there's a few differences. First of all, SIG, I believe, is still fully proprietary, so it's their own money.
Okay.
AQR manages client money.
Okay.
The strategies are very different. AQR is more like asset portfolio management style. So they have some strategies. They take a directional view. They bet on things going up or down, and they execute. And SIG,
Okay.
I think mostly is just market making and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I think once you get into the statistics, it's kind of similar, finding alpha but
Mm-hmm.
the way that the alphas are defined and constrained, the time horizon and that kind of thing, it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think if you talk to an insider, these are like completely different businesses.
Yeah.
But from the outside, you can just call them quant.
Yeah. But life at AQR was much better than your first job getting yelled at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in general, it's like a semi-academic uh, environment.
Mm-hmm.
The founders of AQR were students of Pharma and French. So Eugene Pharma and Kenneth French are, if I'm not wrong, professors at U Chicago. They won the Nobel Prize for their factor-based asset. What's the model's name? I forgot. But like factor-based asset return model thing. And Cliff Asness, who was their student, took their idea and as well as his co-founders took their idea and kind of implemented it. And that's the start of the company. And then
Mm-hmm.
they had bad years, good years, and they kept growing. So they're now actually maybe the second largest hedge fund
Mm-hmm.
after Bridgewater. Yeah, I don't know the subcategory that they're top, but
Mm-hmm.
um, and then so the culture of the company is just you keep finding these factors which
Mm-hmm.
predicts over versus underperformance of certain stocks in the entire cross section of stocks.
Mm-hmm.
You on a daily basis you long and short different stocks. So yeah, it's kind of like that. You get some data set, you try to find this alpha that predicts returns, and then you backtest it. Then if it looks good, you put it into production. I'm oversimplifying again, but that's kind
Uh-huh.
of the day to day.
What was the work-life balance?
Yeah, good point. Usually it's like not too bad. So
Okay.
usually it's um, probably 9 to 6, 9 to 6, 9 to 7.
Okay.
But keep in mind, this company has an office in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Yeah. So you have
So
to
it's
commute.
like, well, I didn't have to commute because it was COVID, but I think now
Okay.
they have to commute.
Okay. Or just
And
live in there. Live.
right.
Yeah.
They have no life. But then for me, it's sort of an outlier because so I joined this team called well, it's a team. And then when I joined, there's like I forgot 8 or 9 people in the team. So I joined in August. Then the bonus came out year end, right? And so by February, uh, I think like 2 guys were left in the team. Uh, and then I was stuffed on this huge project that has spanned like 4 years up to that point.
Mm-hmm. Wait, you
Uh,
spent 4 years on this project?
no. The
Oh.
entire company has
Oh.
spent
Yeah.
4 years, and it's always like a 2 to 3 person project. So it's like a
Mm-hmm.
10-year, project in
Mm-hmm.
terms of human resource spent. And I was brought on to kind of just clean it up because it was
Yeah.
like 2 senior researchers that were actively working on it, and I was just there to like help with documentation and
Yeah.
whatnot. And then both of them quit.
Oh.
Um, and then so I asked my manager, should we push the deadline or are we still delivering?
Yeah.
He's like, let's try.
Uh-huh.
Meaning, let's try, meaning please try, right? For me.
Yeah.
And so I had to catch up on this, like, I don't know how many thousands of line of code base and 4 years of research, and yeah, so it was like pretty tough 4 to 5 months where I'm basically just like go to sleep, wake up, work, go to sleep, wake up, work. Uh, and I think somehow we made the deadline or partially made the deadline, which was pretty good. Yeah, I think my manager said he was like pretty impressed with the way we were able to kind of make the deadline. It also uh, really tight. And yeah, like AQR is, I don't know if it's okay for me to say this. Probably okay for me to say this because everyone knows it. In general, it's like a good talent underpaid situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a good name and they get, decent people, but they really, on average, pay lower than the industry standards. And
Mm-hmm.
so usually people go there, spend a year or two, and they go to like Citadel,
Mm-hmm.
some other higher paying places.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was leaving Princeton, it was COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and so the job market was kind of tough. But I had 3 years of work experience. I tried to get like the second level thingy, and they're like, "Oh, it's tough now. You get the undergrad package." Uh,
Oh no.
so even if they were going to promote me, they will promote me, to where I would have come
Yeah.
out of school.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so by the time I finished the project, I was like, okay, let me look around, and I was interested in crypto back then.
Yeah.
I just started looking for crypto jobs. I really should have stayed a bit longer to get my bonus. It would probably be like well, not too good, but not too bad of a bonus. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like 1 month short of bonus. I got this Uniswap offer, and they didn't want to wait for too long. If I'm leaving, I might as well just leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was it.
Yeah. Wait, so let's talk about the switch into crypto. Talk a little bit more about what made you want to switch into crypto
Uh,
specifically. Yeah.
yeah. So okay, this is kind of an interesting story. February of 2023, I think. Wait, no, 2021. February of 2021. Uh, someone who is doing like an online education thing in China, so it's completely random person, sends me this PDF that says Uniswap V1.
Uh-huh.
And before that, I've heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I was always like, it's a scam.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and this person sends me this random person sends me some random thing, and
Usually that's definitely a scam.
I know this random person. I
Okay,
say it's
okay.
random in the sense that he has nothing to do with crypto
Yeah.
and it happened to be Chinese New Year, so I was in an Airbnb in Long Island. And I was like, okay, let me read this thing. So I opened it. Yeah, it's a Uniswap white paper. And I think I'm pretty sure right now, if I go on Twitter and say it, I'd totally be characterized as like a mid-curve person.
Huh?
I was like, oh, this thing works. Uniswap, this thing, it will work because, you get arbitraged and, so I got somewhat interested, but not just like have an intuitive idea that it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, let me Google a bunch of stuff that's similar to this. And so I started looking up, there's sort of the Uniswap equivalent in lending market, and then in like other markets, basically. And I checked them out. I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's basically a rudimentary version of what I had been doing, but in an automated way. And again, at this point, I'm still not thinking about Ethereum and the deeper stuff. I'm just thinking, okay, this thing looks interesting, and what else is there? And so I just kept searching for podcasts, which now I think about it, I probably got a ton of noise out of these podcasts. But they just kept talking about all these different things, how they're like innovating on top of things. And that's the thing that attracts me a bunch, because it looks like you can just try new things, right? Whether they work or not, you can just try them. And there's like very little resistance. You can try them, and whatever thing that will work will stay. Um, and I thought, okay, that feels like potentially an opportunity, because whether they blew up or not, it's a different story. But the people who tried the the securitized product stuff, they were doing pretty well. Even if it blew up, they had a good understanding of the product, and this thing continued to exist as a fundamental piece of the financial system, even though it had like one bad episode. Um, so I just got more and more interested in it, as I was like rushing to finish this big deadline. So what happened is, over time I realized, okay, I'm doing two things during the day. I'm finishing this big project, or I'm listening to some crypto podcast thingy, or I'm looking online at some crypto stuff. So by the end, I was like, okay, if I'm spending all my time on this thing, outside of work, uh, I should just do this as my work, and
Mm-hmm.
then actual time off work.
Yeah.
So that's the point when I started to uh, think seriously about transitioning into a full-time crypto job. And obviously, the most natural thing to do is for me to join a quant trading firm that trades crypto,
Yeah.
because the job is like the skill sets are fully transferable. In fact, when you trade using a quant strategy, you don't really care what you're trading. They're all tickers, and you don't look at the tickers. It's handled by the machines anyways. Um, so that's like good and bad. Good in the sense that I wouldn't lose anything, but bad in the sense that, like, what is the transition?
Yeah.
You're just transitioning to like a smaller asset class with smaller money floating around. Uh, so I eventually decided against it. I said, okay, if I'm going to try a new thing, I should just commit to trying the thing itself, not some abstracted way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I applied to at first I wanted to do venture capital, because I thought that's where I can get sort of a high level view of everything, and then I can maybe decide what I really want to do. But turns out, in a bull market, they only want two type of people. They want either an ex venture capitalist or ex crypto developer, and I
Oh.
was none of those, and so um, that was very unsuccessful. And so then I started applying to basically crypto projects that I've heard of the name before, and I probably sent out, I don't know, 100 resumes or something. I got one or two interview, I think, and one of them was Uniswap.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
And it's been great since then.
Yeah, it's been great.
And I guess your role at Uniswap is researcher.
Hmm.
What do you do as a researcher?
I think it has really shifted across time. So first of all, I did not join as a researcher. I think when I joined, my title was strategy associate, and was doing really a collection of a bunch of stuff, but like was projecting revenue for a few projects, and was sizing markets, preparing some docs. Uh, and I think they quickly realized that I'm not suitable for that job.
In the sense that you weren't doing it well?
Uh, yeah, probably not. Yeah, I don't know if I'm doing a good job or not. Probably not. And so they decided to move me to research, or like they. I never really formally moved into research, but I was helping research projects, and then maybe 6 months into this job or something, we previously had another head of research who moved out of Uniswap, and then they kind of really needed help in the research org. So that's when I formally joined research. And the projects were, I think, somewhat self-defined. I think I only inherited one project from uh, before I transitioned into research, which is kind of categorized tokens. And as you know, that projects I outsourced to you at some later point. Otherwise, we kind of just pick what's interesting, what's helping the company. So we've done projects in analyzing sort of interesting trading strategies we saw in the market. We've done traditional type of calculating transaction cost and looking at what variables explain the transaction cost, user analysis. Sometimes we help other teams in terms of like reviewing things they've written about market structure. We've basically been serving as technical consultants in the way that because we spend more time thinking about exactly which component happens before the other, after the other, and how that creates an impact on transaction cost and things like that. So yeah, I would say overall, we are a trading related tech company, and so most of the research topics are around how to make trading a better experience, how to make trading cheaper, how to attract more liquidity. So in turn, that makes trading cheaper again and a better experience. But yeah, trading related research.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What do you like about being a researcher?
Mm.
Oh, do you like being a researcher? I just assumed that you liked it.
Yeah, I think I do like it. It's definitely it works well with my personality. I like to do these, mental thought experiments, and I think it has a lot of similarity with actual research. It's just like more formal. I think well, there's a question of like what do I like about research, and there's a question of like what do I like about research here. What I like about research is just you try to discover new things and be able to make relatively strong statement about them. And I think that's exciting. Uh, and sometimes you feel that you've generated some kind of insight that other people have not uh, known about, and those are exciting. um, but specifically I think here we have a decent amount of autonomy that has been very helpful because I'm more mentally invested in my own research. It doesn't feel like something is pushed onto me, unlike the previous case where I'm forced to inherit a huge project and keep the same deadline. Then there's also it's as a company that's developing and building new businesses and in this basically new tech area. There's just a wide selection of topics that we can look into, and so that really pairs well with uh, the autonomy that we have, because if you only have one topic to choose from, then the autonomy doesn't matter as much.
How much do you think, in terms of what makes a successful researcher, how much do you think creativity plays a part in it when you look at the skill set that is required?
I think it creates a part towards the maybe the end of the curve, meaning you can be a decent one or even a good one without a ton
Mm-hmm.
of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to be like great,
Yeah.
then you do need that component because all the things that can be taught to you are, after all, it's known, right? And
Yeah.
you can be a cookie cutter and apply it to new stuff. But I think a lot of the truly innovative stuff, they're not there, and it requires some sort of creative or insights to be brought up.
What role does research play in a company? Do you think it's more supportive or more core to the company?
I think it depends on the company. Like I think in a company like AQR, for example, that's certainly core because that's the only difference they have with other trading companies is the researchers produce different alpha signals, and whoever is more correct makes more money.
Yeah.
And so,
Also, for just so it's clear, the name AQR stands for Applied Quantitative Research. So,
right. So I think there is definitely core. In a company like Uniswap, I think it still remains to be seen. Or maybe I should put it this way: it still remains to be seen how well we can utilize different research outputs, and what do we resort to research versus other method of making decisions. And not saying anything is good or bad. Like I think some people just have really good business insights that they can just operate on intuition and still make it work. And I think that's like totally okay. I think commercially you just want commercial success, and how you arrive at the success is like an interesting thing to talk about, but it doesn't really matter. Um, Obviously, like selfishly, I do hope we can play a bigger role in terms of the success of the company. But again, I recognize that like sometimes we need to describe stuff that happened in the past, and those things might not change things in the future, but that's still okay. Like I still enjoy producing insights that's not previously known and show it to people and talk about it. It's just like it might not be commercially as crucial as research at AQR is.
I'm curious as a researcher, what are the sort of transferable skills that you develop that you can take to another job? And what are those other jobs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Basically, what else can you do after you do this? After you be a researcher? Yeah. Man.
No, I think well, first of all, there's hard skills, and the hard skills are pretty good to have, especially, well, I don't know if I should, especially if you are towards the beginning of your career. So being able to do math and stats and probability, being able to code, and those will happen everywhere. And I think importantly for researchers, uh, or at least some researchers, are actually on average better storytellers than non-researchers, and that's a good skill sets to have. The sort of I wouldn't say disadvantage, but one thing that comes as a researcher or comes with being a researcher is you just have to be pretty deep in the domain knowledge of the stuff you're researching, and that is a premium if you stay where you are, but that's a liability if you move, because unless you stop being a researcher, you're expected to then know that domain knowledge, which you have zero. Unlike if you are a more generic type of profession, then it might feel kind of the same across different specific domain. So I think that really depends on whether you're going to do, the next thing, but it's roughly the same thing or a completely different thing.
To sort of finish up with the career stuff, I was wondering, now that you're in a research role, Do you sort of see not having a PhD ever a limitation? Or how do you get around it? Like, how do you continue to improve and advance in your career?
Right. I mean, we'll see whether it's a limitation or not.
Uh-huh.
I think usually when people hire for researchers, they just put PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really blame other people for doing that. So it might hurt me in terms of the initial screening, or sometimes if people, again, if they use heuristics, then I lack one heuristic that they
Mm-hmm.
want to use. But I think on the other hand, I think of PhD as like doing professional research, and um, and I've been doing professional research, so in some sense, it's like not really lacking the the content, but
Yeah,
more
not the
like
skill, but the credential or something.
right.
Yeah.
Um, so I still think I can probably do most of the job, or unless I lack the actual knowledge of some PhD that I didn't like. If
Mm-hmm.
I were to get a PhD for the research that I've done, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably somewhere in the operations research, economics, or um, I probably don't have enough of a consistent theme to actually get a PhD,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say probably have enough equivalent amount of like research done just scattered around the place.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely lack the depth in like one particular topic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Hopefully I can get that from continued learning, GPTing, and
Mm-hmm.
getting help from expert friends and so on.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of credentials, yeah, that one is a little tough. Uh, I think if it really becomes a career bottleneck at some point, then I just have to figure out a way to to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so far it's been fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe just to zoom all the way back out now, um, can ask you the last set of questions. I was actually pretty surprised to learn that you use this type of heuristics that kind of just look at the average and you're like, if everybody's doing this, I should do this. If everybody, and I thought you would actually be on the sort of type of person who would look at the tail of the distribution and because I guess you're like, I would say you're pretty successful, so maybe you're continuously surrounded by above average people, so your strategy of looking at the average seemed to work well. But I wonder, sort of looking or moving forward, do you sort of look at your strategy of this heuristic, looking at the average? Have you kind of like tuned it more? Have you gone to any particular resources or people or books to hone this ability? Because underlying your career path is this decision making process. So part of it is evaluating your process. And I wonder, have you evaluated it?
Yeah, I think so. I guess first of all, when I say I look at the average, um, maybe that's not too accurate. Maybe I'm just looking at um, like that sample. So I took a sample, for example, let's say when I was in elementary school, right? I was doing coding competition. I would look at the last cohort, so the year above me, and I would see, oh, there's like 25 people who got the prize that would enable them to go to the good school. And I would look around and say, oh, am I the top 25? I think I'm pretty safe there. And then that's kind of my heuristic. So it's technically, percentile based,
Yeah.
instead of like the exact average. Yeah, so maybe average is not the right word. It certainly has some like selection bias in terms of sampling already.
Yeah. So you're
Uh,
looking at, I guess you're kind of looking at the tail. Like, what are the top
right,
90% doing? I should do that.
right.
Okay.
It like as you, I guess, progress in some way, it naturally becomes harder and harder,
Mm-hmm.
and the distribution also becomes uh, very long tail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes so I guess there's two downsides. One is become harder to evaluate because like before it's very simple. It's okay, you get this price. It's either you get it or not, and you know you can safely get it. Once you get it, like the outcome is also clear. You can go to the school. Um, but now there's no school to go to at this point. And even a job that I can get does not guarantee like a good life outcome. Uh, and on top of that, um, if you try to benchmark to people, you really have this humongous distribution where, you know, some people are kind of living an okay life, and some people are making $1 billion a year. Right? So it's no longer feasible to just say, okay, I'm going to be, roughly here, because roughly here means like $100 million apart, or if
Yeah.
we're taking compensation as the heuristic.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's just at this point I'm more focused on finding out what metric I should even use. So it's less about where the metric is. It's about what metric I should use.
Mm-hmm.
I think this even started when I was applying to college because I was sort of tired of being, compared uh, against everyone on the exact same set of metrics all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, which be, I'm gonna try to be someone who is just like you cannot, by definition, you cannot evaluate me on the same metric.
Yeah.
So this happened when I was applying to college. I applied to this super like niche school called Deep Springs College, and it's like it's not ranked at all.
Where
It
was it? In the US?
Yeah, it's in between California and Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every year they admit 12 students or something, and it's a 2-year college, so that means there's a total of like less than 25 students.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be all male, right now there's some female students, and then it's built on this like utopian type of concept where the students run the college, and they every year they hire teacher to come here, and they have to grow and raise whatever stuff they want to eat. So they have like chicken and cows and animals and farms on their school, and their school is in the desert, so there's nothing else. If you want a sauna, you have to build a sauna yourself. If you want a pool, you build a pool yourself. Interestingly, they all the students kind of are guaranteed entry to kind of good colleges, college or universities, traditionally speaking. I applied to this school. The other good thing about the school is it's free,
Uh-huh.
and tuition was a lot, right? So I kind of wanted to go there, so that I can like get out of this. I guess the point is just to illustrate that that was the first time I was like, okay, let me do something that's not measurable on the same sort of cliche benchmark thing. But well, I didn't end up going there, even though I had an offer from them. Yeah, so I think right now I'm just like you're still always going to be compared by other people according to their chosen set of benchmarks, but it's more important to just focus on what your own set of benchmarks are and try really hard to ignore other people's comparison results.
And you're still trying to figure out what the right benchmark for yourself is, or what the right metric.
Yeah, I mean, I have like again some heuristic, but it's I don't know the weighting. Like I think health
Mm-hmm.
is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Having good relationship is very important. Having or the feeling that I'm constantly improving is really important. Food is kind of important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Exploring, trying new things, new places, these are somewhat important to me. But I do believe that even at the same place, you can have new experience. But yeah, I think again, like I don't know the exact weighting or how to trade off between these. But that's sort of where I'm optimizing.
I guess as a final question, as you go about trying to figure out what the right metric is to optimize, have you had a favorite book or podcast or I don't know, YouTube video that kind of really helped you formalize some of these things?
Yeah, I mean, uh, there's a few, and I think we've shared we've shared Outlive by Peter Thiel was sort of the starting. Well, the starting point was basically the Andrew Huberman podcast because when I Google how to be healthy, that's the
Uh-huh.
first thing that came up. So I listened to a bunch of those, and I kind of got into this world of like health, fitness, and other optimization stuff. Then I read the book, well, the Outlive book, which introduced me to the concept of looking at these things sort of in a holistic way, and having real time data feedback and keep adjusting. And so, so the thing that I took from that book the most maybe it's not even the recommendations, but more like the mentality to keep doing this. And so then I was wondering, okay, why don't we just expand this methodology to an even broader dimension? Uh, like he's doing it in with the metric of like health span, lifespan. So in some sense, he has a single metric as well, but it's possible to have a different metric. So for example, one thing that he's not considering is sort of your career development and progression.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's a realistic trade-off that you have to make, right? Because in order to do all the stuff that he's suggesting, you're
It's a
gonna
full-time job.
2 to 3 hours a day for sure.
Right.
And I don't really have that kind of time for it.
Yeah.
And so I think what I'm trying to work on now is I'm trying to just read a bunch of different books on different the main dimensions in life. Then I want to think about, okay, how do I personally, for me, make the right trade-off between these? I don't know if you want me to just go through the list of books, but
Yeah, I want to hear your list.
oh, okay. Well, it's it's sort of the shared list, but
Uh-huh.
I'm reading Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Mainly want to figure out like how rigid do I want to be about my sleep schedule. Good energy. I think it's has a lot to do with what to eat and not to eat. And as I said, food is kind of important to me, so I want to figure out, how much I
Uh-huh.
want to give up on the pleasure of eating
Yeah. The
to have.
pleasure of sugar.
Well, I'm not a
Yeah.
sweet
Yeah, yeah.
type of guy, but yeah. And I plan to read a little more meditation and just like mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And one book that I did read before was called "The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog." It's a book on like childhood trauma and stuff. And I think well, if I were going to have a kid, it's going to play kind of a big role in. But yeah, in general, just try to like uh, maybe heuristics based, but in my mind, there's like a few sections of my life, and then
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get like 75, 80% of it roughly right. And if I can get all of them roughly right,
Yeah.
I think probably in a pretty good spot.
Okay. I think I've bombarded you with enough questions.
Okay. Cool. No, that was fun.
Yeah. Um, yeah, thanks for sharing so much about. I think it's been especially interesting to hear about the parts of you that I didn't know in China and what that was like. And it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I had a much easier life than most other Chinese kids. So
I know. That's what makes it even like crazier.
I guess it's always like kind of lucky if you're born. Okay, I don't know how much this is born, but I feel like I'm born with some tendency to do well academically.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't think I yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of like some natural tendency,
Like a
and
genetic.
I don't know if it's genetic, but like I was good at math before I know the concept of math, right? Or
Yeah.
I was good at computing,
Yeah.
and I think that's certainly something that's born.
Uh,
So that's lucky because if your grade was not good in China, you're like really having a tough time as a kid.
Yeah.
Everyone treats you as second second what do you call it? Like
Class?
second class
No.
citizens.
Okay.
And I was able to like get by with a lot of my like speaking to other people in class
Yeah.
just because I had good grades.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Sweet. Any last words?
No, just thanks a lot for having me, and those are very thoughtful questions. I hope you have good distribution on
Yeah. I hope people like this. I think it's been really exciting. So
them.
really
Okay,
insightful. Yeah.
thanks.